Just about every organization, institution, or group you can think of is made up either of people who are the best at something or people who are the same at something. What I mean is this, there are countless organizations, groups, things like that you might belong to. You have maybe your ethnic group and nationality that you trace your ancestry back to. You have the social club that you belong to, people who all like to go out to dinner to the same places or talk about the same subjects. You have the sports team that you root for or the team that you play for, the hobby group that you do things with. In other words, we're used to grouping ourselves into human communities on the basis of either we all like this same thing or we have this same thing in common. Our like-mindedness, our sameness is what holds us together. Or groups that are based on what we did, what we accomplished, who's the best, right? The team is made up of all the best of the best basketball players, or the track team is made up of the fastest of the fast runners, or the football team, these are the people who can play football the best. In other words, we are used to grouping human beings in terms of who has achieved their way into the club, like a team, or whose sameness has earned them a spot at the table. And Jesus does things differently. He just does. Throughout the Gospels, we get the stories of how Jesus gathers people who are not the best of the best of the best, and also people who are not all identical or the same. Jesus has this way of gathering the anybodies and the everybodies, the ones who've been labeled losers and last picked, as well as people from every different possible background and niche and demographic group. Jesus does things differently. And this coming Sunday, we're going to hear this fascinating, beautiful, compelling passage from the book of Revelation that describes that as sort of our hope, that this isn't a bug, this is a feature. This isn't an accident or a flaw in Jesus' way of doing things. This is part of the beauty of what it is to be the people of God. There's this fantastic scene we're going to hear from the book of Revelation, and it feels kind of like we're watching a musical, because there in the heavenly throne room, people break into song left and right, and this is one of those big show-stopping number kind of moments, because literally the writer John of Patmos sees this gathering of so many people he can't even count them, a multitude of people more than anybody can number, he says, and they're there from every tribe and nation and folk and people. In other words, there's a gathering of people who aren't all bound by their sameness. That's pretty radical if you are living in the first century when John writes, and you picture belonging is about we all have something in common, right? We all come from the same nationality or ethnicity or language or culture, and it's our sameness that holds us together. And now here John's envisioning God doesn't operate that way. God's gathering this big old group of people from everywhere, and they don't all have the same language, and they don't all have the same culture, and they didn't all come from the same place. All these people gathered simply by God's say-so, by God saying, you belong because I say you belong. It's fascinating how different God operates. And then there comes a moment where John, the writer, seeing all this, he asks one of the figures in the heavenly throne room, he goes, who are all these people? Actually, the person turns to John and says, do you know who these guys are? And John's response is, I don't know, who are these people? And the response comes, these are the people who have been claimed by God, who've washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. They've come through the worst of the trials and ordeals and suffering of the world because they've washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. In other words, what makes them belong isn't what they've done, but what Jesus has done for them. The new community that Jesus has begun isn't based on what we do, how we achieve our way in. Again, it's different from the football team, basketball team, or any other organization where your belonging is that you've earned a spot. There is no worrying about earning a spot. That's not how the reign of God operates. We are so used to picturing that the world is just about who's good enough to merit a spot on the team, or who, because they're same as me, has a spot at the table. And Jesus gives us a very different picture, that our belonging isn't grounded on us having earned our way in, that God has never been interested in people trying to earn their way in, and that God doesn't create a community based on sameness either, but is intentionally gathering people from every nation and language and tribe and background to be a part of the people of God. That's our hope. That one day when we find ourselves in glory in that new creation, we don't have to worry, have I been good enough? Or am I close enough in opinion to everybody else? Am I similar enough to everybody else to have earned my way in? Our belonging doesn't become because of what we've achieved, but because of what God has done for us. The people there in that giant throne room show-stopping number are there not because they've earned a spot or because they've applied and they're close enough to everybody else, but because Jesus has offered his life for them. It's Jesus' gift to us that makes us belong. That's where our conversation starts this coming Sunday. And we hope you'll be here for a part of it, to hear about what it is to be shepherded by Jesus, who turns out to be the Lamb who's slaughtered and risen, who's alive and gathers us together. See you Sunday.